Alright everybody, welcome to this brand spanking new Trek channel. I am Fleet Admiral Diaz, and while I'm not entirely new to YouTube, this is a newly minted channel. I'll be looking forward to talking all things Star Trek or sci-fi in general, and I figured a good inaugural piece would be one on Discovery's Season 2 premiere titled Brother. There's just some housekeeping and comments on what came the previous season to follow. Okay, for those who haven't seen it yet and intend to, spoiler alert. For those who haven't seen Season 1, I honestly can't blame you. Let's recap a few things. So, apparently Spock had an adopted sister, one whose primary preoccupation was really just in being able to pass the Bechdel test with her captain, and then committing mutiny against said captain. Now, a lot of the community likes to call her Mikey Spock. I've never been fond of this moniker. I prefer my name for her. Space Sasha. Okay, now I could do a whole litany on the issues with her character on this show and how it kind of feels wedged in, tacked on to the whole Sarek and Spock storyline, but honestly, that's a topic for a whole other video. So, Cliff's Notes. Yeah, Space Sasha there, she works with the crew of the Discovery to find a way to win the war against the Klingons, which she's blamed for starting, whether fairly or unfairly. She works with such colorful characters as Lucius Malfoy, and let's just say most of the bridge crew is pretty forgettable. You got characters like Tilly and Stamets, working the problems on the spore drive, which from the get-go is just very, very pseudoscientific, I'd have to say, even compared to some of the technobabble throughout the rest of the franchise. That it took the cake. But no, there I go, going off on a tangent again. Then you got characters like Ash Tyler, who was a POW, supposedly, taken by the Klingons, and he's having what he thinks, what everyone else thinks, are PTSD issues. Later on, it ends up being revealed that he's actually a Klingon. He's actually the Klingon who was supposed to take over for the leader of the initial hostilities that Burnham ended up shooting and killing and turning into a martyr. Um, this other Klingon that had himself altered to look human and had all these fake memories thrown on top ended up becoming Ash Tyler. Him and Burnham have this thing going on, which is crazy because she's got a whole thing against Klingons. Klingons killed her parents and everything like that. So you end up having all kinds of things happen, like trying to use sonic pulses to see through the Klingon cloak. Yeah, I don't know about that. Uh, they make an insane number of jumps using the spore drive, and I'd say the largest number in one sitting was with that poor guy Stamets actually controlling the thing instead of the tardigrade that they were abusing up to that point, and they ended up letting it go. Um, so what have you, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this will already know about the whole lawsuit surrounding the tardigrade, but um, they make a jump after all this because they think they have the secret to winning the war. They end up crossing over the mirror universe, which, yeah, the fans and the defenders of this show, they like to poke fun at anybody who points out a canon violation. It was a huge canon violation. And the way that they ended up the way that they ended up bandaging it was by claiming that it was strictly classified and no one would no one would know about it, which is something that they end up violating in the very first episode of season 2. So internal consistency is a big problem with this show too, not just whether it's consistent with the rest of the show, with the rest of established canon. I mean, it's not even consistent to itself. So anyway, Malfoy, Tavington, Lorca, whatever you want to call him, he ends up being from the Mirror Universe. He's a scumbag. Uh, he was basically trying to take over on the other side. He was trying to take over the Terran Empire by killing their Empress, who happens to be Burnham's old captain, but the evil twin version. You know, that's the way things work in the Mirror Universe. Um, they end up killing Lorca, and they cross back to our universe. And then there's this whole thing where, I mean, they brought the former Empress with them, and her bright idea for winning the war against the Klingons is to destroy their homeworld. And that really doesn't sound like something the Federation would go for, you know, mass genocide. But pretty much everybody is under the impression that this is going to be the threat of force rather than the actual application. Now, along the course of all these events, they've also nabbed a Klingon who happens to be this Ash Tyler fella's former squeeze, so to speak. They end up entrusting her with the detonator to a bomb that's planted below the surface of Kronos, the Klingon homeworld, and could basically destroy the entire planet, kill everyone on it. So, yeah, essentially they hand her the reins over the Klingon High Council, uh, under under the threat of violent, explosive death. Um, yeah, that's like I said, not exactly holding with the ideals of the Federation, but you know, I guess their outlook on this was you got to do what you got to do. Um, then we end up hearing this whole thing about how they're going to Vulcan to pick up a new captain. The Enterprise just happens to appear and roll credits with the original series theme playing over it. So that'll wrap up a recap of Season 1, which is something that they more or less went through prior to the Season 2 premiere. So let me just say right out the gate, there are some things that I did like about this episode. I'm not a fan of the series as a whole. That hasn't changed. But things like Pike, you know, Anson Mount, bravo. I, you know, I could have easily mistaken his performance for something that Jeffrey Hunter would have put out if he would have been in more Star Trek uh, than that single original pilot, you know, for the original series. That's the vibe that I got. I didn't get a Bruce Greenwood, Kelvin timeline Pike vibe off of him. I got an actual prime timeline Captain Pike vibe. Definitely, big time. Um, Things that I didn't like the fact that they are continuing to shoehorn uh, Burnham into explaining all the tension between Spock and Sarek. That was explored and explained without having to add another character into the mix. It's superfluous. It's completely unnecessary. I think that her character would have benefited from being completely independent from any of the established lore, being her own person, not being tied to anything that is already in place, you know. But you know, going on, and the reason that I bring that up is because they flash back to things that have to do with when she first went to live with Sarek and Amanda and Spock. And Spock acts like a little brat towards her. And, you know, that in and of itself doesn't really bother me. I mean, he's half human, so he's going to have his little quirks as far as that goes. But now where I did get a Kelvin vibe had to be from the action sequence, the one that they touted as being big and flashy and exciting, where they're basically zipping towards this asteroid in these pods. It reminded me of when they jumped from the Enterprise to the Vengeance in Star Trek Into Darkness. It's definitely very similar. And, you know, you got the whole plot of these mysterious anomalies throughout the Milky Way. They all lit up at the same time. They're all
putting out this energy. No one really knows what's going on. Um, I think they kind of missed a beat with the whole buildup of tension when it came to the asteroid, where they were trying to see if anyone was still alive on the crashed ship. Uh, when they pushed it towards a pulsar, that's a pretty serious thing. But they're just kind of casually saying, "Oh, well, it'll be 5 or 6 hours or however long it was before it hits." I never really felt like it was immediate danger, right? Um, you got quirks like the engineer lady down on the planet keeping the crew alive because engineering and medicine are basically the same thing. I don't know. I didn't really like that very much. I mean, she was kind of amusing, which, my understanding is she's a comedian. Hey, I get it, A little bit of levity, all right. That was one of those things that actually landed pretty well. The sneeze in the turbo lift, not so much. But, engineering and medical, basically the same thing. I don't know. I don't remember Scotty giving Bones a hand in sick bay or Geordi offering to give Dr. Crusher the night off or anything like that. But, you know, regardless, so that's going on. And we get to see Sarek acting uncharacteristically smirky and smiling all over the place. It's just it's odd. I don't know if it's the casting choice that maybe was an issue here, or just the way that the scenes are written, right? Um, and another vibe that I got from all of this, and it's been talked about online across YouTube before I got to it. But what I saw in this episode, we're talking about the Enterprise getting disabled just by trying to scan one of these anomalies, right? This Red Angel figure. I'm getting serious shades of the Iconians here. And that's really going to bother me if it pans out that way. Because Season 1 got a lot of grief when it came to canon. Are they really going to traipse on into TNG era material and, I don't know, hit a magic reset switch like they did with Season 1, where they sit here and say the whole thing is classified? By the way, remember I said that they weren't internally consistent about that? Yeah, Pike, one of the first things he says when he comes on board the Enterprise, the Discovery from the Enterprise, is that he read about the entire incident with Lorca. Okay, so he knows about the mirror universe, right? So supposedly no one was going to know beyond the people who were directly involved in all of it. I mean, that's a problem in and of itself, but that's just something that stood out to me. I'm going to try and wrap things up next few minutes. The video's already gone a little bit longer than I intended, just because, I've been sitting here. I tried to do a script. Script kept getting longer. Even when I tried to just kind of use it as a guideline sort of thing, it's still, yeah, just wasn't working. So I decided to go with the whole stream of consciousness thing. One thing that I have seen and heard being pointed out a lot about the episode, I just wanted to bring this up. There were people not understanding how, when they went down to the asteroid, they couldn't just beam down, but when it was time to come back, they were able to beam up. They took pattern enhancers down there. I mean, it's a pretty common trope in Star Trek. If they can't beam somewhere, they figure out another way of getting there, set up pattern enhancers, beam themselves back up. It's something that they've done across pretty much every series. So that's like one thing in favor, I would say, in terms of being consistent with the franchise as a whole. It was just a little minor thing, a little touch that I liked. Now there's another thing, though. It's kind of subplot material. The rock sample that Space Sasha tries to bring back, but she isn't able to because the transporter can't lock on or beam it due to it being non-baryonic matter. Sorry. Um, so that whole thing, and then they end up capturing some of that material off of one of the other fragments, basically by backing the ship into it. And they almost entirely wreck the shuttle bay doing it. But they're talking about how they'll soon be able to interact with dark matter. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Captain Jonathan Archer and Science Officer T'Pol, back during the Enterprise era, which, predated the formation of the Federation even. I mean, we're just talking Earth Starfleet here, right? Not United Federation of Planets Starfleet. Uh, they flew into a dark matter nebula, or what they thought might be a dark matter nebula. It was one of those flashback type episodes where Archer was reminiscing about the whole NX program. The title kind of escapes me at the moment, but him and T'Pol went off in a shuttle pod. They flew in. They tried to use these experimental spatial charges or something like that Trip rigged up for them. And the idea was they were going to try and illuminate the nebula. Well, they did. And guess what? They interacted with dark matter. Now, I want to say that episode took place in what, 2154, 2155, somewhere around there. That's like 100 years before Discovery. But in this episode, they're acting as if interacting with dark matter is a brand new, unheard of thing. Just kind of a nitpick right there. And I know a lot of people don't really care for Enterprise, but it just stuck in my mind because I saw the episode recently. So, it kind of activated the almonds, so to speak. But yeah, all in all, I would say they got some potential. They might be pulling something off this season. It just depends on how things develop, especially with Spock. That's going to be the clincher. But all that being said, I hope that this video was informative. I hope that my perspective was enlightening and interesting. And if you enjoyed it or had a good discussion here starting off, please just go ahead and hit the like button, give me a subscribe there, and if you so deem, set up for notifications. I'm going to try and make this a regular thing, just kind of get a video or two out there whenever I can. So yeah, thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day.